Okay friends, welcome to part 1 of our video presentation on chapter 7 that deals with e-business systems. In the first part of chapter 7 video presentation, we will talk about some of the most fundamental concepts or definitions in relation to e-business, and also some of the key or most popular technologies that are used in relation to e-business. First of all, e-business systems, they're generally defined as systems that enable the electronic transmission of business transactions or other related information between a buyer and a seller. To make it simple, we can also rephrase that by saying that e-business systems enable electronic transactions. Now, if you accept this definition, then you probably see that e-business is a concept that is much broader than e-commerce. In other words, e-business is not the same as doing business online. It's not the same as selling something over the internet or offering some service over the internet. Because internet is not the only way to conduct electronic transactions. For example, you can build your own proprietary EDI or electronic data interexchange system, that may or may not rely on the internet for transmission of data and for automation or for streamlining transactions. So e-business is a big concept, and e-commerce is a subset of e-business. Now, another important concept to have in relation to e-business is dot-coms, and probably most people know what dot-coms are. Dot-coms are the so-called internet pure plays, meaning businesses that conduct business solely through their website. In other words, most of the operations or all of the operations or all of the business of that particular company that falls into this dot-com category is conducted online. An example of a pure dot-com would be something like Google, because most of the operations of Google and most of the products or services that they're offering is done over the internet or online. They don't really have any physical stores or any kind of physical locations where they serve their customers. And then you have something that seems to be on the opposite side of dot-coms, the so-called bricks and clicks, or click and mortars. Well, maybe not the opposite, but like a hybrid approach, I guess. Those are the companies that use internet as one additional channel, meaning they also have an offline business channel, let's say, like a physical retail location where they sell their products, and then they're just using internet as one additional channel, which means that internet, can be an important channel for them, but it's not their central channel of communicating or doing transactions with their customers. An example of a bricks and clicks company would be something along the lines of Best Buy. Because Best Buy, as you well know, is largely famous for their physical stores, right? But also you know that Best Buy has a website, bestbuy.com, where you can go and buy items that can also be found in at least some of their stores. So basically, for Best Buy, their website is one of the channels, but it's not like the only channel that they use to do business or to sell something to their customers. And I remember there was an interesting study or discussion about Best Buy and their physical stores versus their web sales. One of the issues that were raised by those traditional companies when they were under pressure to create a web storefront is that their web sales will be cannibalizing their store sales. And then I remember somebody from Best Buy, explained that their company does not view online sales channel and physical sales channel, meaning physical retail locations, as channels that are in some sort of contradiction. What they were saying that those two channels they work together and they create synergies. For example, they're saying a lot of customers, before they buy something, they actually go to the store, physical store, and they look at those items, in real life. And once they find something that they like in real life, let's say a particular camera or a particular computer, then they go to bestbuy.com and they order it there because the prices may be slightly cheaper there, right? So they view it as a synergy or as a cooperative relationship, as opposed to one channel cannibalizing the other channel. Some other examples of bricks and clicks or click and mortar companies would be, let's say, Staples. Staples again, is I believe it's a store that has it's a chain of stores that has physical presence, but they also at some point decided to sell their items online. An interesting case to discuss in relation to those definitions would be Amazon.com, because Amazon.com is widely used as an example of a flagship .com, meaning like a very exemplary internet pure play company. However, if you look at the operations of Amazon, you will see that it's not 100% pure play. I mean, it is a pure play according to this definition, meaning Amazon doesn't really have any physical stores. But from the early days, they invested a lot into their distribution infrastructure, more specifically into their book warehouses, because they decided that they cannot be very agile and responsive unless they put the logistics side of their business under their control. Okay, so I guess what I'm saying is that Amazon is not as pure play as some people think. I mean, they do have an extensive physical infrastructure involving their stores, and those stores obviously they support their online transactions, their online book sales. Okay, some other definitions. Internet is that worldwide network of networks accessible to the public that employs the TCP/IP protocol. So basically, that's what we use on a daily basis. We use this large network of networks that connects nowadays pretty much all computers together into one global big network, and TCP/IP protocol is used to power that network. Now, intranet is a private network operating using within an organizational boundary. And those networks typically employ technologies that are based on TCP/IP protocol. But the goal of those networks is to provide information, applications, and other tools for use by the organizational employees. So intranet with A here can be viewed like as a private internet. And then you have something called extranet. Extranet is a portion of a company's private intranet that is also accessible via the internet to authorized organizations that are outside of the organizational boundaries. For example, business partners, like customers or suppliers. So basically, extranet means you have your intranet and you're also opening up that intranet so that other stakeholders, such as business partners, customers, or suppliers, they can access your organizational intranet remotely over the internet. And typically, there is some kind of technology like encryption technology or security technology such as VPN that creates a secure tunnel for accessing resources available through the intranet over the internet, which is a public network. So those are some other important technologies or networks over which e-business is conducted. Now, another thing worth discussing in relation to e-business is the so-called Metcalfe's law, or Metcalfe's law. It's a theoretical explanation of some of the most fundamental economic drivers of e-business, or any kind of business based on the top of internet, or any kind of business that is conducted using some kind of network. Now, the law says this: the value of a network to each of its members is proportional to the number of other connected users in the network. So once again, basically, I mean, to simplify this definition, it means that the more users you have on a network, the more valuable a particular model based on that network becomes. Okay. So to apply this law to this simple illustration, here we have a network consisting of two people. Okay, so you have like user 1 and user 2, and they're connected. And here we have a network consisting of 6 users. Now, according to Metcalfe's law, this network has a value of 1 because there's only one connection that can be made with the help of this network. And this network has a value of 15 because there are 15 distinct connections that can be made as a result of this network, existing, right? So so there can be 15 connections. So therefore, using this law, this network is 15 times more valuable than this one. Now, this law seems to be simple, but there are a number of interesting implications. First of all, without getting into any mathematical formulas, you probably see that there is an exponential growth here. In other words, if you add one user to the network, right, the number of connections do not increase just by 1, right? Because this user will be able to connect to this user, this user, this user, this user, and so forth. So there's an exponential growth in value, right? So which means like there's that inflection point where at some point additional users they create like this tremendous growth in the value of the network, and a lot of companies can go out of business without reaching that inflection point, and the companies who do reach that inflection point where the value curve kind of concaves up, they're able to grow their business and profitability at a tremendous pace. Again, all those .coms like Google, Amazon, I think they provide illustrations for that, where at first they need some support, meaning there needs to be some degree of investment or money infusion. But once the network takes off, once that value curve concaves up, I mean, there's a tremendous growth in value and profitability of that company. I mean, it's easy to see also how this law works. If we try to apply this law to some of the oldest technologies or some of the older networks that have been in use. For example, telephone system. I mean, imagine somebody is trying to sell you a subscription to a telephone network where you can only call one user. Now, obviously, that network will not be very valuable to you. However, if somebody offers you to subscribe to telephone services of a network that can be used to reach millions or even billions of users, meaning you have like billions of different connections possible, then it's obvious that this network would be much more valuable to you, and you'll be willing to pay money for it, to be a subscriber, to be a part of that network. The other thing that is worth discussing is the fact that e-business has several important pillars. The first important pillar is technology pillar. So here we're talking about technology standards, communication protocols, various security technologies that protect data online, that facilitate secure transactions, and so forth. But you need to understand that technology is not the only pillar of e-business or e-commerce or doing business online or doing business in digital form. There is also the legal and regulatory pillar, meaning in order for you to do business online, you also need to have certain laws in place that would first of all identify public overall stance in relation to e-commerce, how they view it. Also, some of the specific operational laws, for example, how specifically you can sell your goods or services online, what you can sell, what you cannot sell. For example, can you sell drugs? Can you sell medical equipment online? Can you sell guns online? Right? All those laws, they need to regulate those transactions. And then also you need to have the right kind of legal framework to protect privacy of people, because when you do business online, you leave a trace of personal data that can be captured and stored indefinitely and used for all kinds of purposes. So a lot of people may not feel comfortable using e-business or buying something online unless there are strong privacy laws protecting their privacy, right? So that's what you need to understand, that technology is not enough. You also need to look at the legal infrastructure in order to see whether a particular type of e-business will take off or not. Now, one specific issue that that seems to be kind of far away from the technology side, but very close to this legal regulatory side, is the issue of tax. Because if you're selling something online, let's say you have your website. And let's say your website is hosted, let's say your website targets North American or US consumers, right? But at the same time, your website is hosted, let's say, in Hong Kong, let's say, because in Hong Kong they have less stringent requirements as to what can be sold online. So it's hosted in Hong Kong, and then what happens is that most of your customers, they come from the US. So the question becomes where are you making your sales? I mean, are you making, because your customers, let's say, come from California, they buy your goods or services from California. Does it mean that the sale is done in California or the sale is done in Hong Kong? Because if it's done in California, then you need to pay that sales tax, right, at the state level. So that was one of the legal hurdles that had to be overcome in order to make internet transactions or e-business or e-commerce transactions possible. I think eventually it was decided, and I think it was a very wise decision, to make online sales tax exempt. Okay, to make online sales exempt from the sales tax. I think it was a good decision because at that time, e-business or e-commerce was still in its infant stage, so it really needed some support or boost from the government. But I think I don't remember what the law exactly says. I think most of the time when you buy something online, you're not paying any sales tax. However, there are some exceptions from that. There are some states, they still require payment of sales tax. If you make a purchase, if you're a resident of those states. So I'm not sure. What's happening nowadays with this tax law. But initially, the law was that there was no sales tax on online sales. So this is just one example of the legal environment having a very profound impact on e-business or e-commerce. But there are also there are different nowadays battles involving privacy. Just to give you one example, something that you may or may not know, whenever you search something through Google, all of your queries, all the things that you search for are being logged by Google and stored indefinitely. In other words, Google doesn't delete anything. So, for example, if you had your Gmail account for the last, 10 years, and you've been logged in, in other words, Google could detect that it's your Gmail account, and then you are also searching for something online, then all this search information is stored and linked to your Gmail account, right? Now think about it, like a lot of times people search for some things that are not necessarily illegal, right? But something that is very private. For example, let's say they have a particular disease or sickness, God forbid, and they're trying to do some background research, and by searching for those things in Google, you're basically revealing to the search engine that you have a particular personal problem with health, right? But this is like something that's mild. I mean, some people are basically using Google to find information about things that kind of suggest that they're up to something illegal, right? They're trying to sell something that is illegal or buy something that is illegal, or they're trying to commit like an outright like crime against another individual, and they do some kind of background research on that, right? So the question becomes like, what should we do with this data? Should Google release suspicious searches to FBI, to the police force, or consumers have the right to maintain their privacy when they're using the services? So I think this is still in the air. So, I mean, towards the end of the class, I'll show you like a case study that I wrote specifically about this issue. Who owns data that you transmit to search engines when you search for something? So that's another area of concerns that need to be addressed in order for e-business to actually flourish. And then you have antitrust laws, like what's going to happen, for example, if eBay dominates, and it does, by the way, dominates the worldwide market of auction sales, right? So who has the authority over eBay if eBay dominates auction sales in U.S. and China, right? Does the government of China has the right to break down eBay, or so that there is more competition? So those things need to be taken care of as well in order for e-business to flourish. Just like a brief overview of e-business technologies, things that were happening in the past and things that are happening now. I think e-commerce, which is a subset of e-business, it all started with the creation of browsers. Now, there's a long history of browsers. The first browser that was able to display text and visual information was called Mosaic. And then people who worked on Mosaic browser, they established a company called Netscape Communications, I believe. And this was the company behind Netscape Navigator. So this is how web was born. With the birth of the browser technology, people started thinking that browser can support certain transactions or commercial information exchanges online. Now, you probably know what happened with Netscape. I mean, Netscape was like one of the hottest, one of the most respected internet companies starting approximately 1994. And then quickly, Microsoft realized that they are losing out on this e-commerce opportunity, so they developed their own browser, which is Internet Explorer. And to make things worse for Netscape, they started bundling this browser with their operating system, which is Windows, and they started offering this browser for free. I mean, needless to say, this initiative by Microsoft killed Netscape browser and Netscape's business within like 1 or 2 years. Very quickly, they were out of business. It was like a story of ups and downs, because I remember at some point all of the early Netscape employees, they were millionaires. Even like there was like an old lady who got a part-time job as a secretary at Netscape, and she was like retired and she just wanted to do something for extra income. So naturally she was giving like a small share of the company because she was just a part-time employee. But eventually her small tiny share of Netscape stock was worth like $20 million. So Netscape, browsers, they gave birth to web content without much interactivity, just images and files, and that's where interactive e-commerce websites started to pop up, as a result of that browser technology being developed. Somewhere in mid 1990s, you had like an explosion in search engines. Prior to Google, there were so many search engines that more or less had like an equal market share. For example, Yahoo was a major search engine. Eventually, Yahoo switched to Google search engine technology, and I'm not sure what they're doing now, whether they're still using Google search engine or not. But they were like the two biggest competitors, Yahoo.com and Google.com. But Yahoo was already there, like somewhere in like mid to late 90s. They were already kind of one of the most dominant search engines. Another search engine, just to mention a few, was AltaVista. I remember I was using AltaVista heavily, for my searches, because somehow I thought that this was a very good and useful browser. And all kinds of other, there was like so many. There was like a Hotbot. There was like Lycos or Lycos. I don't know how to pronounce it. There are all kinds of internet technology. But we know that in early 2000, Google came into the market and relatively quickly put everybody else out of business. Starting late 1990s, Java applets, Java technology was increasingly used online, and that allowed for more sophisticated interactivity online. So Java was used to enable secure e-commerce transactions, and also to create like web portals that organizations could use for both kind of B2B transactions, meaning for doing transactions with other companies, and also doing transactions with consumers. By late 1990s, Java technology, laid the foundation, as I said, for portals and also for credit card processing. Then the thing that became hot next was customization and tracking. That gave birth eventually to this movement in business intelligence, web analytics, web mining. XML technology, which is a technology for exchanging data online, digital signatures, peer-to-peer networking, they kind of started booming somewhere in the year 2000. Then also starting the year 2000, there was an explosion in broadband connectivity, meaning it became very cheap and easy to procure, to obtain a high-speed connection to the internet. That gave boost to all kinds of business models on the top of that high bandwidth networks. For example, streaming video data online, something that companies like Netflix and Hulu are doing nowadays. And this technology, this infrastructure is quickly pushing out existing companies, for example, like Blockbuster, because Blockbuster's business is now being destroyed by Netflix or Amazon streaming service. And now they're going even beyond. I believe that the streaming service will also destroy, the business of traditional cable companies, because nowadays you can use like Hulu broadcasting service to watch like all those latest shows, at your own pace, at your own convenience, and for extra $1 or $2 per month, they give you this option of watching everything commercial free. I think nowadays some of the hottest things that are going on are applications or web apps related to handhelds like iPhones, iPads. And I think this trend is kind of dying off a little bit, but this seems to be, again, one of the major trends still. Maybe there's something else being created nowadays. I just cannot come up with a good example of something that is kind of outside of this handheld trend nowadays. Now, I think I already mentioned that, just like, to mention some specific e-business technologies. Prior to the internet, prior to .coms, prior to all those online companies, there was something called EDI, Electronic Data Interchange. Basically, those were like proprietary applications for communicating with trading partners based on agreed upon standards for business document transmission. So basically, it was like a private network for doing transactions with business partners. Some of the early examples of EDIs were created by auto manufacturing companies. They were using electronic data interchange to communicate with part suppliers. Another classic example is Sabre reservation system by American Airlines. So what they did, they created this online mainframe-driven reservation system where travel agents could connect to the central server and make their reservations online in real time. Now that gave a tremendous boost to American Airlines, and some of the offshoots of that Sabre reservation system, which was, by the way, initiated back in the 1960s, are still alive. Like some of those websites, I'm not sure which ones, like Travelocity, Expedia, Orbitz, they're still using that infrastructure that was created by American Airlines. XML language is often used to support transactions, e-business transactions, or any kind of transactions online. So XML is a structured markup language that allows you, and by the way, it stands for like extendable markup language, that allows you to specify any kind of data structure, and then that data structure is sent over the internet and can be interpreted by other applications that are also connected to this first application that is generating the data online. Another thing, and we kind of mentioned it already, is that explosion in broadband connectivity enabled a lot of business models. For example, business models similar to Netflix or Hulu.com, and those business models, I think they already kind of killed those traditional video rental stores like Blockbuster, and now I think they're crossing the road of established cable companies, because nowadays you can watch everything online without subscribing subscribing to a cable company service. Now, digital signatures, I'm not sure whether they're relevant now. They were quite relevant for enabling secure electronic transactions, but I think they're kind of losing prominence. I think they're still there. I mean, all those digital signatures technology, like PGP privacy technology. I mean, they're still used on the background, but they're not as vital, as they were in the 1990s, where everybody was concerned about security and privacy online. But nevertheless, those security technologies involving digital signatures, they were very important. They played a very important role in supporting e-business, e-commerce, and giving people participating in e-business and e-commerce a sense of trust and security. So they were very essential in the early days of e-commerce. But I think at this point of time, they're not at the forefront anymore. They're losing their prominence and importance, simply because they just became like a commodity, something that is given, something that's out there, and everybody kind of takes it for granted. Okay, friends, so this concludes part 1 of our video presentation on Chapter 7, so thank you for listening.